He's a bartender coming from Key Largo. I don't know why he started with testing.
And we started with testing one.
So we can cut that. Hopefully they'll cut that. Right? We'll cut that.
I think that's funny. They could probably leave it.
What? Do you think they'll leave it?
They should just leave it.
Oh, my levels are real high. I had it for these guys. I did this show with earlier today. I had the levels up just so they wouldn't be drowned out by my...
Oh, gotcha.
Yeah, I was just sitting at I'm here with Jenna Kelly, and Tyler just came home from work.
Hello.
And Hoagie, their dog, has a big satellite dish on his head. And getting doggy
had ear surgery.
Satellite television again. All Animal Planet, all the time.
His new nickname is Donkey. That's what I call him, Donkey.
Donkey.
Well, his ear was so filled up that it was okay. It looked like a donkey ear.
Yeah. Oh, so. I guess it doesn't matter. You can talk about it. Why was it filled up with blood?
It was a hematoma. It happens with dogs with floppy ears.
Really?
Yeah. It's like an internal,
a vessel breaks.
Like an internal bruise, and the blood vessel breaks, and it fills up with blood. So it's just a hematoma. The first time they drained it, but they didn't suture everything back together to kind of hold the top part of the ear and the bottom part of the ear back together. So it refilled. And then this time they had to go in big time and give him a bunch of stitches and slice him open. And so now he doesn't have his donkey ear anymore, but he still looks like a donkey. Donkey.
Poor Hoagie. We were but I was looking at these coasters they have for Florida State. It looks like the exact mascot from Archbishop Ryan, the high school I went to.
Yeah.
Over almost 40 years ago.
Well, the Florida State Seminoles is their mascot, so of course it's a Seminole Indian. Yep. But yours is a
Seminole. I mean, that could be almost any. Is it a Seminole?
Well,
they call it the Seminole.
They call them the Florida State Seminoles.
Yeah, but that's probably just lifted. It's just any Indian.
Yeah.
They put in there. And why a Catholic boys' school? And I mean, there were Indians up in my neck of the woods in Delaware. There were the Delaware Indians were there, and the Lenape, and I imagine the Iroquois was up in that area.
Yeah.
And Christ, a whole bunch of them.
There's so many.
So many tribes. But I've been looking at it, and I said, and today I was listening to a story about how number one bestsellers was about a fictional story about a Mexican woman and her child being an immigrant, who's written by someone who's like 1/8 Puerto Rican.
Okay.
And she's speaking in the voice of a Mexican woman.
Oh.
And she's a white, I think her name's Cummings, the woman. And she won all these awards, and all of a sudden, when she got enough attention, people just realized, they go, wait a second, who the fuck is this person?
Yeah, who are you?
That it's just,
well, did she do
I think this year they wanted to, who was it? Anne Hathaway? They were going to have somebody, they were going to do a movie about Harriet Tubman. And they wanted a white actress. So one of the producers or something like that, they suggested a white actress.
And then blackface them?
I don't know what they do. I just don't know how in this day and age, maybe 70 years ago, maybe not even 70 years ago would make that 1958. No, they were using, African-American actors. Maybe 85 years ago.
Right.
Or 90, even then, to portray, not that there's tons of African-American actresses.
There are tons.
There's tons. And to suggest that you'd use
a white woman,
listen, whether you disagree, I know some of my people that listen to the show are somewhat conservative in their views. But when it comes to, we're such a diverse country. If you need someone, you don't need, they had Gandhi. Who did Gandhi, play Gandhi? F. Mary Abraham, a Jewish British guy.
Yeah.
It happened many a time. Charlie Chang in the 30s and 40s, I think the movies were made, was played by a white guy.
It makes me think of the movie Holiday Inn with Bing Crosby and Fred Astaire, right?
Danny Kaye.
Danny Kaye was in White Christmas. Well, Holiday Inn. It was Fred Astaire and Bing Crosby. And they were.
You're right. You're right. Not Fred Astaire. Wasn't Fred Astaire. Bing Crosby.
No, it was Fred Astaire.
No, it's not Fred Astaire. Google it.
Okay, I'll Google it.
Holiday Inn. Holiday Inn?
Holiday Inn.
Oh, I'm thinking of White Christmas.
Right, I know. That's why I was trying to say Danny Kaye was White Christmas.
White Christmas.
This is
Holiday Inn. I don't know. I don't remember. I didn't know Fred Astaire was in that. That's good. That's very well could be.
Yeah.
So what about it? A black person played by a white person?
They had, like Mamie, who was the maid, and then her two small children who, would run across. So we'd say, Mamie, could you get me this? And then she, her kids would follow her everywhere, the big, black lady. And then she would go, is your name's Mamie? And the little kids would be like, no. And they'd still follow her.
Little white kids?
No, little black kids. Her little black kids. But, it was for the time, I think it was really progressive.
Yeah.
Because that movie was just they had, the black actress in there. They had, little,
I think Butterfly McQueen was the lady that won the first African American actress to win an Academy Award, but she was portraying a slave.
Now, in Holiday Inn, this movie was made in
it's got to be 48 or something.
1942.
Yeah.
And, it's Bing Crosby and Fred Astaire. And then, but they did a scene. So basically what he did was he retired. He got out of the Daily Show business, right? Bing Crosby did.
Yeah.
And then he moved to this, ranch, basically.
Holiday Inn.
At the Holiday Inn, called it the Holiday Inn, and it was only open on the
Christmas
holidays. So it was Christmas. It was President's Day. It was they had all these different things, all these different holidays. And they did a blackface routine on Lincoln's birthday.
1942?
In 1942. So, but the kids were also in it, and Mimi was in it, and everybody was in it. So it was really progressive for the time. Now, if you were to go back and say so many people would be offensive that the blonde white girl that plays his dance partner.
Well, Gene Wilder put on a blackface and well, he did that in Stir Crazy and in what was that movie? Trading Places. Dan Aykroyd did it.
There was one that was more
but
recent.
it wasn't minstrelly, but that was the minstrel, and there was a bunch of, and I hate to talk about this, but there was a lot of horrible, until the 80s, there was a restaurant called Sambo's. There was really a derogatory, rendition of an African American, and the people had to fight to get rid of it, and people just, there's people defending it. That's our brand name and stuff like that. I said, holy shit, people really hold on to their, but right. It's not an icon if you're denigrating someone. An icon would be your thing. If you, say, well, you can't put Jesus in the picture or you know what I mean?
But now the newest one, the most recent one that was out there with a white actor playing a black man was Tropic Thunder. And that was with Robert.
That was comedy.
It was comedy.
That was comedy. But, that was outrage. That was cultural. That was them. They were satiring.
They were
spoofing. The way Hollywood would do that,
right.
And use. And he was Robert Downey Jr.
Yes.
He was like a kind of a Russell Crowe type actor, deep immersion, and he went to
supposedly
a surgery. They never did surgery. They
really
did
into it.
Yeah, no, but he did a surgery to get his skin, but it wasn't. It wasn't that. He didn't do the surgery.
And he even tried to change his lingo and tried everything else. Yeah. And then when they were telling him, we're not recording, we're not the spoof on it. They were like, we're not recording. You can stop talking like that. You can, and he was so into this character actor position in quotes that he just kept on with it and, kept denying that he was actually a white guy under there.
Yeah.
But he made some comment a few days ago about how he didn't regret doing that movie with the blackface. And there was a bunch.
No, it was done the right. I guess it was done the right way because it showed the hypocrisy. In the end, right. He didn't have the operation. He was just using makeup.
Yeah,
he was just using makeup to do that. And there was a book written. I told you about that. I think I spoke about it in the past. A book written called "Black Like Me," and where a white guy took medicine to darken up his skin.
Melanin.
I don't know, whatever.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the thing that makes your skin darker, but I don't know if just taking it makes your skin darker.
Yeah, I wouldn't know.
No. But he took something and he tried to pass himself off as, I mean, imagine how hard that would be to, in certain, like in a, I guess in a neighborhood situation, it would really be hard to get the colloquialism. But if you played someone like James Baldwin, the famous writer, or people, these literary people that they all sound alike. I mean, I say they all sound alike. I mean, literary people all sound alike. Whether you're Asian, African American, white, Asian, Indian, whatever, their voices, their inflection, all sound the same way. I know that's when you really get burned. Those people all sound alike. When I said those people, I'm talking about literary people. The people that
you've jumped on now from
cultural. Well, we're talking about cultural appropriation. Right. That was the point I was leading to on that, and how the way some people is it viewed, and it'll be hard to. Some people consider it an homage to a culture,
right?
Like the Beastie Boys when they came up and they did it, and there was a little, people say, "Well, why all of a sudden, we do rap and we're gangsters? The Beastie Boys come up and they're artists, and they sell, #1 songs and all this stuff, and I can see them being bothered by it and just coming in, or it goes all the way back to the old music from let's say antebellum, pre-Civil War, post-Civil War, having white singers in blackface singing black songs, garnering the attention for it instead of just bringing up African Americans to sing their music.
Right.
A lot of the music was made by he was the governor of Florida, the one that wrote Swanee River and Mammy and all. It was a white guy there was a white guy that wrote Swanee River and Camptown Races and all that stuff. Decatur, I think his name was.
Oh, Camptown Races.
Yeah.
Song, doo-dah.
Yeah. That was one of those songs. But then after that, there's others.
Camptown Races, sing this song, right?
Doo-dah. It was what they said.
Camptown Races all day long. Oh, doo-dah day. What does that mean?
Gonna, something right all night. No, wait, gonna, something right. Gonna ride all day. Bet my something on a bobtail nag. I'm going to bet on the bay. It was portraying African Americans. I'm pretty sure it was. But after that, there were songs made by African Americans that white people appropriated. And then into the rock and roll era, you got Muddy Waters, B.B. King, Chuck Berry, and the famous black songstresses. I'm drawing a blank right now. Oh God, they were great singers too. At Last.
Well, I'm sorry. That's
who you're talking about?
Yes, that is. Oh my gosh, I used to sing that one all the time.
You know what I'm talking about?
Etta James.
Etta James, and there was someone before her too. They call her Lady something or other. They did a movie, Lady Sings the Blues, and it was about her in the 40s and 50s and 60s, 50s. She Lady Sings the Blues.
Are you talking about Billie Holiday?
Billie Holiday.
Okay.
And then all these singers white women come up and they start taking the songs and recording them and making them famous. And then Led Zeppelin recorded, even I think Beatles may have did a little of it. Rolling Stones really started getting into it, which I don't know how. I imagine they did pay some kind of royalty for the rights to use the song, because there was a lot of music they did when they made the transition to playing for the American audience.
When it's an homage, or if you're like complimenting that person, like, oh my God, I love that song. That's really cool. I'd love to cover that song. I think that But I mean, if somebody were to mock it or make it sound terrible, then that would be a different.
Whole Lot of Love was one of those songs. I think that was Muddy Waters, maybe. Whole Lot of Love by
I'm not sure.
Led Zeppelin, and a lot of Led Zeppelin music came.
Mike, but was Swanee River sung by a white group that painted their face black?
Minstrel shows, yeah.
They were using minstrel shows. Yeah, a minstrel show.
So that's what I found.
Yeah.
And I saw the video. I was like,
Swanee, how I love you, how I love you. No, Mammy, that's Mammy. Wait, Stephen Foster.
In 1851.
Stephen Foster. I said Decatur.
Al Jolson.
Oh, Al Jolson, amazing songwriter.
Yep. Al Jolson,
yep.
A white guy.
Painted black.
And singing this thing, yeah.
Yeah, but see, that's what I was saying. That's blackface routine, the movie
and his
Holiday
song,
Inn
his voice wasn't really classic African American. There was a famous singer at the same time, and his name was Paul Robeson. And he was, if you put in Paul Robeson, he was an early civil rights leader. And he actually moved to the Soviet Union. The Soviet Union used him as a, they would talk about how America wasn't. And Soviet Union was just this, they were horrible to ethnic minorities in their federation. But Paul Robeson, I think at one point emigrated to the Soviet Union because it was pretty horrible. If you think about it, you're one of the greatest singers in the United States. And there's the movie that just came out last year or 2 years ago, The Green Book. Did you hear about it?
Yeah, I did.
Viggo Mortensen's a driver.
Yep, I haven't seen it. The guy that just
won the Academy Award for, I think, Moonlight or something like that a couple of years ago, played a famous classical African-American pianist. Mm-hmm. And he couldn't, whenever he was touring, he's touring all around. It's the same old story. You couldn't stay.
He had to ride in the back of the car, and then he had to keep him hidden.
Yeah, and they had to get him. You couldn't stay anywhere. Right. Couldn't eat everywhere.
Well, of course, but that was also set back in the day where hotel owners would throw acid in a pool because they saw that there was black people.
I know.
Horrible.
I just think it's kind of, you have an elite people in certain cities like Atlanta and Charleston want to hear this great classical pianist, but they don't do anything about getting him accommodations.
Right.
Fuck you. You don't get to hear him then.
Yeah. Exactly.
Obviously the guy has to live.
You want to hear him play piano.
Yeah, but you don't want to do anything about it.
But you don't want to let him use your bathroom.
Well, I don't think it came down to that. I don't think they had... Those people were there were people in the South that were progressive enough to understand that it's no big deal, but they weren't. I guess there weren't enough of them that they could feel comfortable about saying. And there were some of them. I think maybe not necessarily privately, but publicly. Lyndon Johnson, who was a child of the South. Of the hill country in Texas.
Well, how the times have changed.
Yeah. Well, but there's 70-year-old people out here that remember exactly the day where they can't do those things. And to be able to see someone culturally appropriate their hairstyles, their music, their the way they dress,
right,
and things like that. And then they're denigrated by some segment of the white culture, and then they're also celebrated by other people. And what made me think about that was just recently, 2 days ago. I'm not going to lionize the guy. He was a famous guy, a basketball player. He died. And maybe rightly or wrongly, the helicopter shouldn't have flown. But there was a guy and what really sparked it was Martini Monday Night.
Yeah.
This guy last night, he was talking about, hey, why are they talking about him when they should be talking about the other people? I'm saying if a helicopter crashed with 9 people and they didn't know anybody, they wouldn't talk about anybody. They would just talk about the helicopter that crashed, right? And I was explaining to him, I said, why are you upset? And this guy happens to be a gay man.
Yep.
And, I'm talking about, I said, why are you making a big deal about it? I said, I became aware that when it comes to death, and someone dying, I do not try to make an issue over the way people react to it.
Right.
If they want to feel sad about it, fine. I mean, it's sad. It's a sad thing what happened. But I think it's a horrible thing. He's a great basketball player. He was and all these things.
Right.
I wouldn't take that away, and I don't take it away that they put it. It is a news story. He was famous, but what would happen if it was another helicopter crash in the same area, and there wasn't anybody that you knew, and they didn't say, but he was upset they didn't talk about the other people. I said, normally, if he wasn't on the plane, they wouldn't have talked about any of them.
No, they'd have been like, oh, helicopter crash, blah, blah, blah.
Don't take away from that, and maybe there's, they'll remember the good things about it. They'll memorialize him to his family and the people that died on it, and they're starting to recognize. And now they're starting to recognize the people that did die on it. They showed the pictures. They never show pictures of people that die on the plane, and they talk the stories about it. So
I believe that was at the request of his wife.
They brought all of them up, and but either way, they're actually. People know who they are, and maybe they'll get new rules on that. You know what? We'll get back. Let's talk about this. Right, we're going to finish talking because it is a big issue.
Yeah.
Let's take a quick break.
Okay.
And then you can ask Tyler what he did today.
Whether you're one of our regular visitors to the Florida Keys or you can't wait to visit for the first time, you'll want to stay up to date on everything that's going on in the Florida Keys. To learn all the secrets, tips, and the stuff we don't talk about to anyone but each other, visit 43keys.com. Sign up for our newsletter and never miss any of the exciting things we have planned for you. That's 43 Keys. The number 4, the number 3, keys.com.
We're back. The thing we talked about previously, I said cultural appropriation was about someone getting upset that they were making such a big deal about Kobe and his daughter being a passenger. Right. He says, how about these other people? And we came to the thing. It wasn't them. And you brought up a very good point.
Obviously those other people weren't in the media every single day. People aren't going to know who they are. Yeah.
And it wouldn't have said it, and it wouldn't even said who they were or anything if that would.
No, but I believe that was at the request of Kobe's wife, and she was very upset because, can you imagine if you found out by watching the news that you lost your wife and daughter?
Your husband and daughter, yeah.
Well, but I'm saying
for you. No, I'm going to put myself in a show.
Because she found out by watching the news that her husband had been killed.
Is that true? She was watching the news?
Her second oldest daughter was killed. They had not even had a chance. The sheriff's department had not even had a chance to properly notify next of kin. Now, this woman has had 4 children with this man. They have been married for a long, long time. This is her second oldest daughter. Their second oldest daughter, and she has a newborn. Yeah. And she found out by watching the news because of TMZ. Shame on you.
Well, fucking TMZ's that way.
Yeah,
anyway.
But you know what? Shame on you.
TMZ. They were just like the fucking people with Princess Diana and all that stuff, where they were chasing them down.
But you know what? Some of those people are the ones that probably caused it.
Yep.
Not in this
ignoring
case.
and hindering being able to do something. Mm-hmm. For them, or I don't.
Right, get in the way. But here's the thing. From all the other witness accounts is that helicopter pilot followed every rule. And when he came up onto the valley, he hovered over the nearest city because the fog was so dense and it's not typically in that area. Mm-hmm. So he was hovering over the buildings. There was people saying you could tell that he knew what he was doing. He was up above the buildings and he was hovering. And he was high enough to where his wash from the propellers,
the prop wash,
right, were not disturbing the street below. So he was high enough up to stay away from interrupting anybody, but hovering and waiting for the dispatchers basically to let him know if it was safe to proceed. And he even said, this does not look safe to me. Can you please keep track of my location and advise?
Oh, is that what happened?
Yes. And he had there was twin rotors on this helicopter. There's a big helicopter.
Yeah.
Think about it. There's 9 people in there.
That's a big helicopter.
It's a big helicopter. So you got twin rotors on top and you got your big rotor on the back.
Yeah.
And this guy smacked into the hillside in dense fog.
Oh.
And it was an immediate stop. There was no break off one rotor and you can hear the nothing. It was immediate stop and then almost immediate smoke. And they were like, thank goodness it happened that way. Of course, it shouldn't have happened at all. But you knew then that it was an instant impact and there was probably no suffering. They may not have even seen it coming. Hopefully. But what I was telling him the other day, my husband, I was saying, what I thought was
I just the other thing were you about there was someone that came in. They're looking at their phone.
Yeah.
Earlier before you came in, and they said, "Well, there's video of it," and I said, "What?" I mean, and they said, "Do you want to see it?" And I said, "No, I don't want to see it. I'm not. I mean, and when I say that, I mean it out of all, not just respect for the dead, just the empathy. I hate seeing when people show they have pictures of aircraft. I know you have to have a picture. It's the great thing about having pictures of aircraft going down is they can study and see what happened and try to prevent that happen. And the same thing in this case.
But there's there's a way to be appropriate about it and not expose the dead.
Oh yeah, the TMZ and all that stuff.
And what I was trying to tell Tyler yesterday was, like, I showed him pictures. Do you remember the day the music died?
For Buddy Holly, Richie Valens.
Well, I was a baby.
You remember hearing about that, right? And JP Richardson, the Big Bopper.
Yeah.
Their plane took off from Clearwater, Iowa, Clear Lake, Iowa. And they were en route to North Dakota for the next concert. And Richie Valens actually didn't even want to get on the plane. He was terrified of flying, but he was
Buddy Holly was the pilot, right? Or something?
No. There was a hired pilot.
Oh.
It was Buddy Holly, the Big Bopper, which is JP Richardson, and Richie Valens. And those four were the total on that plane. Now, like I said, Richie Valens was too sick to ride in their tour bus because the heater went out and he had a horrible, horrible cold. So basically they flipped a coin and he got on the bus. Or I'm sorry, he got on the plane. And that plane was in the air, and somebody can correct me, but I believe it was for just under 6 minutes before it crashed. In a field next to a fence. And I have the pictures, and I showed Tyler yesterday that, back then, no one had any kind of concern about these people's families at all. None. So when you look at the crash scene, you can see Richie Valens dead in the foreground. Body just mangled. You can see Buddy Holly as well with a white jacket on, body just mangled. And JP Richardson, the Big Bopper, who was catapulted over the farmer's fence.
Yeah.
And then the fuselage of the plane completely crushed and crumbled with the pilot still inside and crushed to death with his feet sticking up.
Wow.
And you can see these pictures all over the place. What pissed me off about the TMZ videos was that they were putting out the videos of the crash scene with their own helicopter up there recording the news before they put the blankets down to cover the bodies.
Wow.
That's just as bad as pushing yourself back into the 1950s. Like, knock it off.
Yeah, in the 1950s, they do all this stuff. They do crime scene guys who come in.
Right.
What was it? Spy Magazine and stuff like that. They did all that shit. It did it in L.A. Confidential.
And I didn't see that video. The one that I did see was Monday or first thing in the morning through Facebook, YouTube video that was posted of the helicopter spiraling out of control going down into the canyon.
Spiraling. Now that doesn't
sound like what the
thing is.
No,
okay.
And that doesn't sound like it's from what everybody heard.
Yeah,
because it was just.
You never know because
Who knows?
the way.
They could have made some shit up. They could have found some other
scoundrels
crash
about that stuff. They sell whatever. There's a show. I'm going to get off that negativity stuff, and I don't mean to say that it happens. There's negativity out there. There's a fucking coronavirus, which is since we're talking about. There was before. I would imagine if I was the brewer of Corona beer, I would be looking at that probably heavily weighted towards negativity.
Yeah.
And there's some people saying, hey, this may be a good thing. You know?
A lot of memes about it.
I know. Do they make memes?
They make memes about it. They were like, well, coronavirus, I'm going to beat this with corona. Like,
did they?
I've been a few. I've seen a few.
Oh, assholes. I mean, there were always, people say I have coronavirus after Cinco de Mayo and shit like that.
Yeah.
But I kind of thought that before. Who would, it was in Wuhan, China. Why would you call it corona?
Well, it's actually, I believe it was part of the strain. It was the C-R. It was like the C-R0, so they just called it corona because it was like CRO looking. It's kind of like
make it into like what do you call Zika?
Right?
They just make up a word.
Well, it's because of the strain. It's like the C strain of the virus, and then it's got an R factor in it, and whatever. It's part of the like.
What if there's one out there that has a JENA?
I know. What if it's the Jenna virus? Then I would walk around and I breathe on people and go.
Yeah. But there was a movie out. Was it 9 years ago? I think it's called Epidemic. I'm not sure.
Oh, I know.
Matt Damon was in it.
I think so.
It was really good too. It was a Christopher Nolan movie. With Christopher Nolan, and it go from the beginning of the where there's bats in the roof of a pork processing plant, maybe, or something like that, where they're housing hogs, and the bats are or something like that, and it crosses over into the human population, and then it was a great movie. I'll tell you that. It was amazing. They hit it. They hit all the points. Christopher Nolan always, for a couple of years, he really knew how to do those fucking movies.
There was a funny meme.
What?
I mean, it wasn't funny because coronavirus is obviously not funny, but the meme that I saw earlier was like this guy playing a video game and like inventing a virus and taking out all the people at Area 51. And he was like, oops, wrong computer. Like, oh, that's not good. But it was,
Well, people, They jump on it now because they forget, like in 1919, the Spanish influenza killed 19 million people worldwide. 19 million people.
Jeez.
Yep. It was almost as much as World War I. Just the flu virus.
Yeah.
So they're thinking the same thing. And I always thought, I'm not trying to be culturally insensitive. China runs a pretty tight fucking ship.
Well, but that they're.
I thought India would be the place. I mean, it's not. But that it's dirty.
Isn't China's Center for Disease Control in the hometown of where this actually broke out?
That's her.
I mean, I thought so.
Well, I mean, just saying, when you have a lot of people together, it kind of makes sense. That's where. But they have very little. I guess. I mean, they do. The good thing about a dictatorship, they do know how to crack down. I mean, they got these things. People can't fly in.
Wuhan.
They can't fly out.
Yeah.
It's real tight there. And they said about 3 months they should come up with a test serum that, whatever they should be able to come up. 3 months, though. Believe that? We could, there could be
it's called the strain of the virus is called 2019 lowercase n, uppercase C, lowercase o, uppercase V for virus. So they shortened it to, which is short for 2019 novel coronavirus. And then that's how it got to be just coronavirus.
So
acute respiratory syndrome, severe acute respiratory syndrome. But yeah, Wuhan, I believe, is also the hub of their Center for Disease Control.
So like their third largest city in China or something like that. It said like 12 million people there. It's Chicago or something like that. So, well, I mean, people get all upset about that stuff, but we've been living since 1945 under the threat of nuclear war.
Right.
where that could forget about we could
all just get
we're going to be
radiation
100
poisoning.
100 million people to 500
off.
yeah.
The water will boil. I mean, we'll be done.
Well, there's not like a disease that would encourage international cooperation.
Yeah, it's true.
Right? I mean, what are you going to blame people? It's going to come from someplace.
Right.
The bird flu.
The swine.
I don't know if the bird flu started in Egypt, maybe.
Bird flu.
Did they call it Nile? There was a Nile. West Nile virus. West Nile virus.
West Nile is mosquito-borne, right?
Yeah, that was the West Nile virus. And then there was Ebola was out of Central Africa.
E. coli.
Ebola.
Oh, Ebola. I thought you said
E. coli is naturally occurring.
Yeah, that's what I was like. Huh?
Ebola.
Yeah, Ebola virus.
The Zika.
There was the Zika. Yeah, Zika is also
like a bird flu, maybe.
No, Zika's another. That's the mosquito one.
Yeah.
There's Zika, and then there's
the bird flu's mosquito because it was transmitted from mosquitoes too, right? Mosquitoes are a big transmitter of diseases because of the blood.
Assholes. They just need to
They're
die.
not assholes. That's just
They're mean.
They serve a purpose. They all serve a purpose.
Great.
There's only a couple mosquitoes that actually, the Aedes aegypti is one of the main ones that feed on.
H5N1 is also
the bird flu.
The bird flu, avian influenza.
And then there was
the swine flu.
Swine flu.
And then remember when there was the cows, the
mad cow disease.
Mad cow disease. Wasn't that like a
that's from
anthrax?
Was mad cow disease though? Wasn't that one from eating the sweetbreads of a cow, like their head cheese?
I'm looking.
Or it was from the
Bovine
meat?
Spongiform encephalopathy, which means inflammation of the brain. I do know that.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's a neurodegenerative disease in cattle.
Yeah, and it comes from eating some byproduct.
I think it's, let me see.
Mad cow disease. And they couldn't, the British couldn't, they had to kill off almost all the cattle, right? Something like that. Or quarantine it.
Something. 10 symptoms of mad cow disease. There's so many different
Now, if you think about it, all the people that we have around today, you have more people living today than ever lived before.
It's if they eat any diseased tissue from the cattle that's already infected. That's how it's transmitted to humans.
And you go back, there's always tons of it.
There's so many different weird things.
Something for everyone, for every animal. Lucky there's not a dog one yet or a cat one.
Hey, did you read that thing about patient zero and HIV? We're so morbid today. This is just terrible.
HIV, what was that? Oh, the Belgian,
Remember how
Belgian flight attendant?
They kept making up, they kept like kind of blaming everything on like patient zero.
Yeah, it was bullshit,
patient
right?
Zero. It was complete bullshit. They like proved it wrong. Like there was no way.
Do it on a gay man, right?
Yeah, but it's because he had it. He had HIV, but since he was one of the first cases discovered that he had it, they just basically blamed They blamed him on it. They were like, "Oh no, it's because you were a flight attendant. You flew all over the world. You must have fucking, had sex with this monkey, and then or whatever." And
I don't think he had sex with him.
Well,
he wasn't the one who accused him.
He most likely did not. He probably just had sex with another gay man in this different country, and that guy had it. But who knows? They were like, there was probably multiple. Strange of it because it's the same thing, like where it'll jump from, an animal to a human. So if it jumps, it'll jump from an animal to a human. It's not just one human. Probably.
How would you have sex with a monkey? In the middle of an orgasm, it could rip your face off.
It could bite you. It could just be that a monkey that's already infected with
I don't think someone was having sex with a monkey.
Jumps on you and bites you. Then
how desperate would you have to be to have sex with a monkey?
Right,
or a
might eat your face
lion?
off.
Why not a lion?
Right, because they'll eat your face off. They just
or lion or tiger, a Cape buffalo maybe.
Yeah.
What the fuck? Some people they just think that there's people out there that
Yeah.
They're desperate. They're pretty desperate people out there. So
they have to blame somebody. They have to have somebody to blame. But it was terrible because that one guy. That Belgian, flight attendant guy was literally his life was just like messed up and ruined. He was just pointed fingers.
Did he die?
I believe so.
Okay. Well, that's probably the worst thing that happened to him.
Well, right. But I mean,
the other things was the second worst.
yeah, can you imagine?
I mean,
being miserable and like dying?
When Magic Johnson was first diagnosed with it, I remember back in the 90s, a friend of mine, Chris Mogi, she was crying. She goes, Magic Johnson has AIDS. And she was crying. I said,
HIV,
well,
I don't believe
HIV, whatever.
I don't believe it ever
Well, they called it that. If you had whatever you said, they didn't call it. They did call it that, right. HIV positive. Yeah. But when people heard HIV positive, they heard AIDS.
Right.
I mean, it progresses to AIDS. And it's a death sentence if you were HIV positive. When the assumption was they were just at the cusp of the cocktail of drugs. And to this day, healthy, however old he is, 60-something-year-old man.
The cocktail that they have, I mean, granted, it's really tough on your body.
Very expensive, yeah.
And it's very expensive. But there's so
I don't think it's as much as that. I don't think it's as bad as it was before.
I don't think it is as now either.
No, I think it's actually, the ones they use are very benign.
But they literally can now completely eliminate.
I don't think it's coming. They can get it low enough that it's non-transmittable.
No, they can actually test so that the HIV virus is not detectable in your blood.
Okay, from what? Okay.
So they always say, it's dormant. It would be dormant.
I would just say that they said that, from what I understand, is the way I heard it was, and it's minute difference, was they could get it into such a low thing,
like
it's
a remission,
undetectable maybe, or you can't pass it on. It's just like it's one of those tiny things. Okay, we are at 42 minutes, so we're gonna end this show right now. What a happy show. We're in the Keys. Beautiful light. We talked about some death, the coronavirus, AIDS. You know what? Life is, I think, death is part of life. It's a circle of life.
It totally is.
And that's what happens, and we have to be able to handle it.
But it's
dealing with death, and dying, being able, and there's 5 stages. 5 stages of... No, actually, there's only one stage of dying. You die dead.
Yeah.
But dealing with death. And I guess ours is... It happens. So what are you going to do about it? And obviously if you're experiencing someone close to you, it's a horrible thing and stuff. But as you know, there are tons of people out there that go on afterwards. And and I heard the human being is resilient. There's people that lived through the Holocaust and some horrible shit. And they are alive and thriving today. The human spirit is very resilient.
Yep. There really is.
And on that note, we're going to end the show.
Yes, and on a happy note.
Yep. Sunshine and happiness.
Sunshine, happiness.
Side note, current temperature, 70 degrees.
70 degrees,
low of 63 tonight with clear skies.
Yep. Come on down here.
And our meteorologist has chimed in for the exit of the show.
And we will see you next time.
Yes.